Good afternoon, and welcome to our same show with a new name. And Greg, who gets to say the new name?
Well, it was your idea. I think you should get
Where'd
the
he
credit
go?
for it.
Where'd Greg go? All
I'm
right,
not
say
here
it
now.
again, Greg.
What happened?
Turn up his house volume, please, so I can hear him. All right. We're going to start again, audience, so just pretend that this never happened. 5, 4, 3, 2, and welcome to our new show, Clash Course. That's right, I'm Joey Livingston, and this is Greg Brahe. Hello, Greg.
Hello, Joey. I look forward to it. And frankly, I think pretending this never happened is going to be a habit you need to get in, or you need to get used to, because I'm really looking forward to just mopping the floor with you today.
That seems to be a term that you're using over and over again when it comes to me. I'm not sure that it's a literal. Can we turn him up a little bit on the house? I still can't hear him very well. Maybe on the monitor. So you're coming from your dark atheist layer, I see.
I am. I keep trying to figure out someday why I'm always in the dark here. It looks bright on my side, but I think you people are turning me down.
That's not true. That's not true. So I'm excited, number one, about our show name, Clash Course. Greg and I have been, we fight about everything, and our show name is certainly one of those things. And I came up with a lot of really, really brilliant ideas, and then Greg picked one of them.
I can't even argue with that I contributed nothing to this brainstorm. So that's this would be once again, in the spirit of honesty, I was useless in the naming of this show.
Well, if you really admitted that, you would let me pick the name that I actually wanted. But
yeah, that one was terrible.
I'm not even going to say it because I don't want to appear too bitter. but Clash Course is a good name. It's a crash course in clashing. Greg and I clash as much as possible on this show because we enjoy it, don't we, Greg?
I do. I don't know how you possibly can. I mean,
you don't know how I can stand it.
Right.
You don't understand how I can stand you.
No, I've heard it's quite laborious. So.
So today we're going to begin a new and interesting topic. Greg, why don't you state it?
Well, the sensationalized topic, is there a God? However, I can't argue that topic, and that's why we had to modify the question itself a little bit, because that is an absolute statement of truth, and the only answer I can give you is I don't know. The question, therefore, becomes, should people believe that there is a God? And that, I can absolutely argue, the answer to is no.
Gotcha. All right, so my overconfident friend will take his position in just a few moments, but first, I wanted to share a story because my other comrade in arms, Matthew, refused to do our show today, so I didn't get to share my story, and the moment is going to pass, so I'm going to share it with you. Today, I got a new shirt, and I wore it. This shirt is very special to me. I'm going to show everybody now. Ladies and gentlemen, what you have just seen is the logo for the Polytron Corporation, which is the company that develops Fez, my favorite video game in the whole wide world. And as you can see, shut up, Greg. That's my moment. As you can see, it has multiple colors in stripes and curves. The colors are blue, yellow, orange, and black. I walked in today, and nobody had any clue what it was, and I would say 80% of the people that I talked to accused me of coming out of the closet. So I just chalked them up to ignoramuses, and I went on, and the ridicule continued. And then this morning, my family arrived, and I walked out into the classroom where the kids have a kids' place here at our studio while we're broadcasting. And my son looked at me, and the first thing that he said was, "Daddy, where did you get that Fez shirt?" It was a proud moment for me. And I said, "Son, would you like your own Fez shirt?" And he said, "Yeah." So I don't know. It was a moment to remember. I was very proud of my son, the only person that recognized the Polytron Corporation logo. So hats off to him. That's my story.
That was a nice story. Thank you for sharing it with us, Joey.
You're welcome. It's important that I be as charming as possible on this show because it's one of the only strategies that I have going for me. All right. So we have kind of teased about this discussion in the past few shows. And one of the things that we talked about just briefly was that we should agree on what was meant by God. And what we decided that was not meant was we weren't talking about the Christian God as defined by the Bible, nor the Muslim God as defined by the Quran, nor any of the gods in mythology. We were not talking about a specific God written about in a book. What we are talking about is a very generalized idea of what a God might be in modern culture, which is a conscious and willful creator. And I think that sums it up quite nicely. I don't think that you can prove specifics concerning any of these other gods. That's my position right now. I believe that there's a compelling argument, however, to be made for a conscious and willful creator.
I'd like to add one small caveat to that, is that it's not just a conscious and willful creator, because that allows us into deism. I think that we need to make the argument for a theist God, so that this God is concerned with the affairs of humans to some degree.
Okay, well, I'll make a compromise with you, okay? I claim the position of theism, so it's only fair that we do that. However, when we agreed on this debate, that was not a stipulation, okay? So what I want to do is I want to begin by, number one, talking about a conscious and willful creator and make a compelling argument for its existence. And then we can get into that. I will, however, argue that if I can make a compelling enough argument concerning the existence of a creator, that it is, by definition, out of the realm of deism, because deism claims, at least the strictest form of deism claims, that there probably is a creator, but he has in no way revealed himself to us.
I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that assessment of deism, but that's okay. I honestly, I don't even really need to argue against the theistic God for the purposes of this. We could stick directly with the deist.
Okay.
And bypass that entirely.
I think that's fair for this discussion, because you did say, you specifically wanted to rephrase it this way, that it's not reasonable to believe in a God, meaning any God, whether it be a God who speaks in English or a God who hides behind the bushes, any sort of God.
That's accurate. Yep, and that's why I'm happy to stick with just the deist God. I think that it makes more sense. I mean, more sense from an atheist position to say that I do not believe that there are any gods. So even a deist would be, or a deist God would prove me wrong.
There you go. All right. So conscious and willful creator. We're going to stick with that. Correct?
Correct.
All right. So where I want to begin is to talk about what it means to be conscious and what it means to have a will. Okay? The only reference that we have for that in any scientific sense is the living creatures that we have in this world that we can touch and see, and the best subject to study from is the human being, because we all live inside of one. Fair enough?
I can agree with that. Okay. Sure.
All right. So what we know about consciousness and will, and let's just for a moment consolidate that into thoughts. Okay. And what we know about thoughts are that thoughts in the human brain they're not something magic. I know when I was a kid and I had thoughts and I had life within me, that it felt like something magical and unexplained. And I think to a lot of people they still look at it that way. And I suppose that in a sense it is magical, but I mean in the sense of mysterious, unexplained, that it can't be explained in terms of chemicals, etc. And that's where these ideas of the spirit or a ghost or a soul come from. Is that people are still searching for something beyond chemical reactions and firing synapses. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah. But from a scientific perspective, that is all that's all it is. It is chemicals going back and forth in the brain, balancing and imbalancing, electric synapses firing in various parts of the brain to spark creativity or logic or emotion. That's all these things are, correct?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not a neurobiologist, but to my understanding of it,
no,
yes.
We're going to make this is a very rough cut.
Right.
I'm not even a scientist, but I studied enough of science to understand this. I remember learning this, and it just striking me as bizarre. Like, am I just a bunch of chemicals going back and forth in my body, cells interacting, atoms interacting with each other, electronic pulses firing? Is that all I am? And there doesn't seem to be anything that we can perceive beyond that. And today I'm not going to argue that there is anything beyond that. I know, however, that I'm not a computer, that somehow all of these things together, with either something that I can't see, something that we have not yet discovered, or nothing more at all, one way or another, that all of this comes together to make me a very complex creature who has life. I'm not just some computer who sits around and calculates things and has no awareness of itself. I'm not just some running machine. I perceive things from the inside out. It is almost like this, like whatever I am living inside this body, and it is a tool that I use. It feels like I'm more than that. I'm not arguing that I am. I'm just saying that somehow it all comes together to be consciousness and willfulness. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
Okay. So another thing that I want to touch on is that there's no major consensus on the issue of fate and choice when it comes to these issues from a scientific perspective. For example, some scientists will argue that it is the chemicals within us and the balance that they have, combined with the circumstances around us, that make choice. It is not as if we can make any choice that we want to within any given circumstances. It is our chemical and it is our chemical makeup, our biology, that affects those decisions, and we are confined at least to just a few in any given circumstance. And we're not all the same. Some people are confined to choice A, B, and C, and some people are confined to choice B, D, and Z. And while we feel like we can do anything that we want, that is somewhat of an illusion. And then some scientists or philosophers will argue that we are more than that we can certainly rise above that, and that is I take a position somewhere in between. I do definitely concede that I am a product of my chemicals, but yet I feel that I have the ability to, within just the ability to control my own body, to change who I am and rise above those circumstances and be a different person with a different set of choices. Is there anything that I'm saying here that you disagree with so far?
No, but I'm curious where you're going to go with it.
I know you are. So I'm glad that you don't disagree with any of that, because I want to continue to build on that concept. Consciousness and willfulness. I just want to summarize this again. Within the human body is an interaction of cells and atoms and chemicals and electronic pulses. That is what makes consciousness and willfulness. Things within us that are interacting. Now, if we step a little bit beyond this, that is not where consciousness and willfulness stops. Because when it comes to things like a democracy, you have the will of the people. And the will of the people is when everybody comes together and they vote and they make a choice together. Or it could be a mad mob that is angry about something, and somehow together, there may even be two people in that mob who don't want violence, or there may be 20 people who are generally peaceful people, but this mob influences everyone to become violent and angry, and even the people in there who are determined that they have just got caught up in something, they're either going to move with the mob or they're going to get trampled. And this is the will of the people. This is a consciousness of its own. And in a very similar fashion to the human brain, this will and this consciousness is merely a bunch of smaller things interacting to create a final outcome as one.
Sure.
Sometimes we as a people, we make choices as a culture and as a people and even as a world that we're not even aware that we're making, like destroying the environment or becoming a less healthy society, or becoming a warmongering country. Sometimes the choices that we make and the things that we believe create a will and a consciousness that is not even necessarily something that we as individuals would choose on our own. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm arguing here is that this world has a consciousness and a will, much like our brain has. It is smaller things interacting to produce a final result, and it has a life of its own. And it is much bigger than any single one of us, and it can destroy us or it can lift us up. True?
Well, this is where I think that it gets a little bit sticky, is that consciousness, as per your definition, does imply self-awareness. And even if there is this, what has been philosophically called collective consciousness, or social forces, the global will, if you will, then we still have only established that there's a force, but not necessarily a self-recognition within that force. But for this, I want to see where you're going with it, so I'll grant it to you. Sure.
Well, I will. I would counter by saying that there may have been a time when we were not self-aware on this level, but as a single force, a world culture, or if you just want to reduce it to a nation, the United States, for example, the majority of this consciousness is aware of itself. We are not just aware of our own bodies, but we're aware of the power that we have as a people. See what I'm saying?
I do, but I think that that's a little bit of begging the question, in the respect that just because even if every single part, every single individual that makes up the part was aware of this collective consciousness, doesn't mean that the collective consciousness itself is aware, in the same way that your brain cells need not be aware of your consciousness for your consciousness to be true. And it seems unrealistic to think that any one brain cell, or even the majority of your brain cells, being aware of themselves would have any influence at all on your brain entirely.
That's fair enough, and I think it's a good point, but it still goes back to the idea that this awareness, this will, this consciousness is nothing but a bunch of smaller things interacting to make choices. It is difficult to define what exists beyond that, what it is that is behind my eyes, that is anything more than that. It is so difficult to define what that is that it almost, I would argue, goes beyond the realm of this debate.
I might agree with that. Sure.
I mean, you can't.
I mean, we're not necessarily going to debate what is consciousness. I think that.
Right. But well, actually, yeah, we can't debate that, but we can. I think that we can agree on some things about what consciousness is, and I don't think that there is much that you and I can disagree on concerning what consciousness is that we can actually define. You see what I'm saying?
I have to agree with that. Yeah.
I mean, what we can agree on is what I have just said, that it is smaller things, whatever that may be, atoms, chemicals, electronic pulses, interacting to produce a single outcome in any given moment. And that's all that we can agree on. Anything beyond that, we can't even put our finger on yet.
Sure, absolutely. I would like to note how interesting it is to see a theist come at this with such a naturalistic argument. That's why I'm really curious where you're going to go. I'm expecting now. Let me prophesy here a bit. See how I can do.
All right.
I'm expecting this to turn almost into a pantheistic argument, or similar to even Nick Albertini's argument that the multiverse itself is a self-aware entity, if indeed it does exist.
You know, these thoughts that I'm sharing with you today came together for me not too long ago. It came together probably all in 5 minutes. And then after that, it took a while to kind of bring it into word form in my head. I was brushing my teeth, and this train of thought began with you. And it was almost a joke, because I was thinking of the night that our mutual friend Cy Brugenkate was so abusive to you and to pretty much everybody in this studio, and he was insistent on the claim that you already believed in God, and you were denying it in unrighteousness. And I was sitting there brushing my teeth, and I thought to myself, what if? And I was just being silly in my head. I was like, what if Greg already believed in God? And I was like, is that even possible? And then I thought about something that Dr. Jones has said over and over again up here on this stage and on Facebook in his writings. He has said that we're all looking at the same evidence, and that we should be able to look at it together and come to conclusions together. That there shouldn't be something that is exclusive to one person and not the other. And so I started thinking about it from that perspective, and what I realized the whole time that I've known Dr. Jones, who I count to be, the biggest influence in my belief systems, and in the entire time that I've known him, he has always said that the existence of God could be proven, but he never offered that to me. I've never seen him spend time doing that, or at least I don't remember, and I think that I would remember it. And I always wondered what that would be like. And he used to say that a lot back when I had some very, very Christian-oriented beliefs. And I just couldn't grasp how I wanted to believe that you could prove that God existed, because I believed that he existed. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I just couldn't understand how it could possibly be done. How you could prove that this Bible that I hold in my hand was, infallible, and that what it said was that you could prove the things that it said. And I was thinking about this that evening while I was brushing my teeth, and I realized that I was coming at this with a lot of baggage and a lot of baggage that were a lot of assumptions, and that these were things that, at least on a conscious level, I had walked away from. But somehow in this regard, I was still thinking about this issue from that perspective. And so I began to set it all aside and say, as a theist, if the theistic position is even valid, it's probably important these days that we begin from ground zero and look at it from a perspective of the things that we can perceive. Because for centuries, theists have claimed that a belief in God is not something that you can hold with your physical hands or see with your physical eyes. It is something that happens within you. It is the touch of the Holy Spirit. And if that doesn't happen to you, then you're an outcast. And this becomes as much of a tactic to get people to believe in something that's not rational as it is just a fantasy. This isn't anything that any human being can rest upon. It is something that will drive you crazy. And so, still brushing my teeth. They're getting really clean.
I'm going to say, is there a conclusion to come to? Because we only have like another 25 minutes in this show. So.
Well, I didn't intend for this to be a short discussion. Yeah. So, anyways, I realized that it's possible that my friend Greg is looking at the same evidence that I am. And you're using different words and we're looking at the same thing. And it's just a linguistic difference, or one of us is coming to the wrong conclusions, one or the other. And I tend to think that it's a mixture of both. I only use the word God as a shortcut, because I believe in this argument that I'm making to you right now, I believe that I am talking about a conscious and willful creator who has probably always been and always will be. And I believe that it is very much as the Apostle Paul said and Jesus said, that we are in him and he is in us. And I believe I don't agree with the deistic argument that this creator has not revealed himself to us and he does not speak to us. I think it's a foolish assumption. I think it's a short-sighted assumption, because as I pointed out to you in our last argument, to restrict communication down to the spoken word is, it's one of the most foolish mistakes that mankind has ever made. For these reasons, we have excluded mutes and mentally challenged people and people who have cerebral palsy. In the past, we have excluded them as freaks, incapable of functioning in this society. And it is only because of brilliant scientists who have realized that language really goes beyond the spoken word. It is because of their brilliance that the human being within those people is finally perceived that they're just like us. They're just in a body that works different. And so I think to assume that revelation is limited to the spoken word in any language, I think that's the deistic argument. And if it wasn't, it would fall apart. I don't see how you can believe in a God who created this world that we have around us, and not think that he revealed himself. His fingerprints would have to be all over it, just like a painting. You are looking at me from across your brow this whole time. Yeah, give me some of your thoughts.
Well, it's hard because I've agreed with much of what you have to say, and I think that even the other things that you have to say that I don't necessarily agree with in the philosophical sense, or I don't see them as being representative of reality, are still something that I can agree with as being perfectly rational and logical. So things, and you really haven't made that much by way of those claims. You've made some speculations about what the nature of a God would have to be if it existed, or what ways we could tell that it might be there, what ways we could perceive it. But for the most part, what I've understood is coming here is that consciousness can work at many, many levels. It's not just at the human mind level, but it could be anywhere. I mean, there could be subatomic consciousnesses. I mean, I think, again, Nick Albertini spoke quite a bit about scale invariance and about any sort of complex adaptive system that undergoes selection. We can have the same structure that our brain undergoes, and that's the same structure that our brain has. And I think that is a perfectly valid way to see it. I saw that just last week there was a new report published in arguing that the universe in structure is very similar to our brain. That was actually also done, oddly enough, in Iron Man 3, which I just saw last weekend, but represented in that way. And I can see where the argument is going, but I have to say my reservation comes here, in that the word creator is an operative term in this case. When we look at creator, I guess we didn't define it entirely, but I have always considered that to be creator of reality, not just necessarily creator of any part of reality. And therefore, I mean, the way that I see this argument going is essentially turning it into a truly pantheistic argument, meaning that the universe itself is God. And it's not necessarily the panentheistic argument that the universe is God and God is more, or God is the universe and God is more than that, which I think is the very minimum that would need to be established for us to have a reason to believe. But I did want to...
What's the very minimal? Say it again.
A panentheistic, that the universe not only, or God and the universe are not perfect synonyms, because...
That is not, first of all, that is not a stipulation that we made at the beginning.
Well, I think it is. That's the argument that I'm making, in saying that the creator would, by definition, the universe is something that would need to have been created by a creator.
I don't agree. So
is that the argument that we're boiling down to here? Is a pantheistic argument that we can redefine our understanding of the universe to mean God?
Well, you can define it. I mean, you can label it however you want to. I am not. I have not explored the many facets of pantheism to know whether I fully agree with what it says. For example, I have I have a bone to pick when it comes to deism, but I have studied deism to enough of an extent to find one. I haven't studied pantheism enough to know whether I fully agree with it. I'm sure that there are facets of what I believe within pantheism, deism, and theism, but you know, I will leave it to you to label it. What we agreed on when we entered this conversation, and you can call me a trickster or whatever you want to, but that wasn't my intention. I simply wanted to make a simple argument that we are a product of a creator. We are the product of one who creates and is both conscious and willful. That is all that I wanted to establish. And that is all that I said, and that is all that you agreed to.
Well, I think that's a touch inaccurate. I think that we did not establish the original horn of that in saying that we are the product of that. We simply we asked, is there a God? And we defined God as a creator. But and this may be something that we failed in doing properly. We did not fully define what we meant by creator. I guess the understanding that I had of creator in going into an argument with a self-confessed theist was that this would be a creator of reality. I was pulling from the previous argument that or the previous agreements, sorry, that we've had by what this term means.
A theist at his most basic level, or her, is simply one who believes that there is a God and that God has revealed itself.
That may be true, and I understand that there's a lot of variety.
I can't help it if you made some assumptions. I did state, I have stated in other conversations with you that there was a night when we were all sitting around talking, and I said to you that you were making some broad assumptions about what Dr. Jones believed, and that you had not listened to any of the things that he had talked about. And I kept driving this point home, and then I finally said at the end that we had been having an argument over the existence of God from the standpoint of the Bible, and that I wished that one day we all could have the argument from a much, much more bare bones level of simply talking about a creator versus not a creator. And this is the conversation that I had hoped that we would have. Of course, there are a million things that we did not establish about this conversation. I wanted to talk about the things that we have established. Now, you can say, well, I was really talking about something that was outside of this universe, but that isn't something that we established. And you may have thought that we did, but we didn't.
Well, I'm going to make a appeal to convention on that one, though. That I think that the broadest understanding of the term God, the most common and therefore the most representative of what that term is generally used to mean across all theists, and this is going, again, not a Christian argument, but going across Buddhist arguments and even extinct religions have certainly believed in a creator of some sort that created the universe as it is.
So you are saying that that you really want to go there, that's really what you want to argue. And it sounds like
I can't argue that the universe itself could not be considered a conscious entity that could in one way be considered a god. I think I can argue that that's not the conventional understanding by any stretch of the word.
Fine.
What
that's fine.
God means.
But you are not just implying, but you are all but hedging on what seems to be this, that as a self-proclaimed atheist, there is on some level where you believe that it could be possible to make a compelling argument that we come from something conscious and willful that is much, much larger than ourselves.
Sure. I mean, again, I think that we've made a very strong argument there, or so far, for consciousness, not necessarily for willfulness in that respect. But yeah, I can certainly see I really couldn't argue against the pantheistic argument. If, again, I'm not an astrophysicist either, not a neurobiologist, not a complex systems analyst. So these things I have a layperson's understanding of, but I certainly could see that the universe itself could potentially be at least structurally capable
alive
of
and breathing.
What was that?
Alive and breathing and growing.
Right, and it could certainly be structurally capable of these things. Now, for us to know that it actually is, and I think that's where the argument really...
Yeah. But remember that I didn't say that I felt that I could prove it. I said that I felt that I could make a compelling argument that would make it reasonable to believe in something beyond just, that we came from, nothing.
Well, and this is where, we spent a good portion of this with allowing you to expose your position, and I think that in the last few minutes, I think we've both come to an understanding of, at least to a greater understanding, not necessarily a fully mutual one, of where your direction is going. So I feel it's only fair to elucidate a touch more the argument I intend to make. Now, I'm not going to have time to necessarily expose all of it, but mine is not an argument of what does exist. As a matter of fact, it's not even an ontological argument. I guess to an extent, if I'm asking about what should be believed in, it must be. But it's more of an epistemological argument. I intend to make the case that should is a normative word. Should implies force of compulsion, and that means probabilistic tendencies, at least, to say that there is a good reason to believe this as opposed to not this. And thus far, I think that we have certainly come to a place where we could say that it is potentially possible that the universe itself is a conscious and possibly even willful thing that could be considered a creator. Now, I will say that I had not expected the argument to go in that direction. So I was anticipating something external to the universe. So
I'm starting to feel like that your frustration comes from the fact that you can't fully make your argument and it affect me.
Make my argument and have it directly affect
I think that you had an argument prepared that you were hoping that you could just, steamroll me with, and now that you understand my position, I don't think that your argument is going to steamroll me in quite the way that you thought it would. Is that correct?
Well, not in the way that I thought it would, no, but it certainly still will.
Okay, all right.
So I think that again, the argument that the universe itself can justifiably be considered conscious and willful, or at least potentially so, is certainly an argument that can be made. And to make the argument that therefore is that belief in God is something that is justifiable is one that we can do. But that's not the term that I looked for coming into this one. I specifically wanted to say should, because I think that, again, the force of compulsion is a significant one. Now, I don't think that we can say that there is a probable likelihood of that being the case. I think that we can say it's possible, but until we have more evidence and we've been able to establish this to a greater degree, it is still at this point a minor probability. And therefore, even if we go by the Karl Popper position of falsifiability, it is testable, it is falsifiable to some extent, but we don't yet have the ability to falsify it, and therefore it's something that it truly doesn't have any way to be held as truth. I don't know. I'm really bad at describing Popper in that respect.
From my perspective, I feel like that it's already plain to see. I mean, you can take the items. I'm not even going to call them evidence, because I don't want to claim that I'm offering a irrefutable proof here. I'm just saying that I have put items on the table, and in my eyes, that it's already well established that these things have a consciousness and a will that works that works the same way that my brain does, that makes decisions that go beyond me, and I am a small speck. I'm just a speck of dust within that system. And if all that we can observe in terms of life is the life that happened here on this earth, and if that's all that there is in this universe, I think that that's enough to establish our source from a creator that is both conscious and willful. Even before we existed, there was life and evolution that had a life of its own, and decisions were made based upon these elements interacting. But decisions that were, in a very similar sense, arguably, that there was very little choice in the matter. That these are just the way that that things were going to happen.
Well, it certainly is an interesting argument, and I have to say that I expected this to be more than a single show, and I'm excited that it is. I thought that knowing you specifically, and the fact that you are not a very traditional theist, meant that there was going to be something that I didn't expect coming into this, and I'm really excited to continue this conversation as we move forward. I think that I can still, and I believe that I'm or not only can I make the case, but I believe I am correct in making the case that we still do not have any normative, compelling reason that we should believe that there is a God, even if we define God in exactly this way.
All right. We have just a couple minutes left, and I want to say something in closing here. That I want to come back to the point that we are all looking at the same evidence, and you have conclusions about that evidence, and I do too. But isn't it refreshing to be able to have a conversation between an atheist and a theist, to where one isn't claiming that they have evidence that you can't touch or see or understand, but that we are both looking at the same things, and we're on the same ground. We're in the same world, same reality, and we are just interpreting it.
I certainly am refreshed by it. I have to say that it is rare form for that to be the case. But I did want to make one other comment.
Don't end this by putting me down.
Yes, forgive me, because this is a quick closing jab here, but this is not a jab at you.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, this is a jab at traditional theism and in dogmatic beliefs outside of this structure. Is that I think we were faced coming into this with a question that you looked at and said, it's going to be really hard to make a case on this from the traditional standpoint that you were coming from. You stepped outside of yourself and or at least the subconscious part that you were still holding on to, and I applaud you for the recognition of that. To make an argument that now is something that I would really venture a guess that most theists would have a hard time listening to your argument and saying, yeah, that's my God. So yeah. I find it interesting that to make the argument that there is a God, you had to ignore most of what people like to talk about God as. And I'm not saying that that is a fault on your end. I'm saying I applaud that.
It opens all kinds of doors, Greg, because if that is God, to use the shortcut word, then it opens this door that even though I am in him and he is in me, or she or it, even though I am just a speck, that in a very real sense, God is what I make him.
Profound. That's interesting.
This has been Clash Course, and we hope you've enjoyed it. And we will continue this discussion next week as I continue to throw all kinds of unexpected curveballs at my friend Greg and take him off guard until he's as bald as I am. Until then, we love you.